Okay, so this is my end of semester reflection for the goals we made this semester. Um, so the first part about the reflection about my performance. My first goal was to learn more about general medicine. And how I said I would do that was by taking time after each observation and think about like the things I learned. And I think I did a really good job of this because after each observation hours at each place, I sat down and wrote my journal entries right away. And by doing that, I really got to like focus on the things that I learned, I guess you could say. Instead of waiting to write them, I got to think about it all there and kind of tie things in with what we've been doing in class. So I think that was one of the goals that I did a really good job of achieving. Um, my second goal was to become more confident in my evaluating slash my clinical sites. And I said that this was measurable by keeping track of how I do with each evaluation I do and what decisions I make in that like scenario and kind of critique how I did things to improve for next time. Um, I think I did an okay job achieving this one. I was kind of towards like the end of basketball season at this point when we first started our clinical here. We only had a month or so left in it. But that was one thing I did do was stopping after each eval and either just thinking about it through by myself, like what I could have done differently. But I think I also did a good job of asking Jordan like what she would have done differently or like what test she would have done before, like other special tests. Or I sometimes would just have Jordan come watch me do an eval to see kind of watch how I went through it, and then she would tell me after something that she would change or just do differently that she found that was easier and worked better for her. So another thing I said for that one was that it was attainable because that I was at practice every day and I got to see a lot of the injuries. But the only thing that was kind of difficult was that I was gone in Jan term and a lot of injuries with our girls happened over Jan term, so I was kind of on the towards the end of their rehab process getting back. But I think I did an okay job reaching this goal. Could have done more for it, but I think overall I did become a little bit more confident in evaluating injuries just because in my first rotation I really didn't get to do a whole lot of evals because it was um, fall of my sophomore year, so we were just starting upper and I had soccer, so there really wasn't a whole lot of upper extremity injuries. Um, but I think this year was really when it came down to um, using both upper and lower and seeing how confident you actually were because when you go through your evals, like you do okay, but then in the real world, it's a completely different situation. So I think I definitely became more confident evaling this semester. And my third goal that I don't think I did such a great job of achieving was that I set time aside every day for homework. And I said this was measurable by making a schedule and checking it off as I sit down and focus on homework every day. Um, and this was one of the goals I set just because living off campus and having a house and having a dog and a job on top of school and everything sometimes gets really overwhelming. And I'm really bad about putting other things in front of schoolwork sometimes just because I shouldn't, but sometimes I think they're more important or they need to be done right this second. And I've kind of let that get the best of me at some point, and I really realized that I need to focus on my schoolwork because that's the whole reason I'm here in Manchester in the first place. So that was something that really kind of like snapped me into gear, and I was like, hey, you need to get this together. So I was a lot better about this about going to the library instead of just sitting at home and trying to study and then you have the TV distracting you or have like the dog distracting you. I think I did a really good job at least 3 to 4 days a week for the most part, going to the library and spending 3, 4, 5, 6 hours there working on homework. And I definitely think that made a huge difference just with how involved I was with my classes, that I was a lot more into them, and they were all more interesting because I was spending the time like doing the reading, the extra reading we were supposed to do, or things like that. And it also showed in a lot of my grades as well that I actually spent time, extra time doing that kind of stuff. Um, so I think for the most part, I did do a really good job achieving that goal. I still think I could have done it more, but I still think I did pretty well with it to begin with. So for my plan for next semester, I think each of these goals is something that I can continue on for next semester and just build on and add more to it. So for the first one, um, learning more about general medicine, I think that I could have done more with this if I were to go like observe these places outside of our general med rotation, just because I think it's really good for us to kind of see how other physicians and people in the medical field do the like handle their situations. And I really think that like seeing how they handle situations reflects like how we do in athletic training. So I think it really helps to get like an outside perspective on how they deal with situations, because it's obviously different. And I think like us dealing with athletes and them dealing with just regular patients, I guess you could say, it kind of gives us a new perspective on how to kind of go about those things. So I think next year that like to continuing to learn more about general medicine, just to go and kind of observe again sometime would be really helpful with that. And for my second goal about being more confident in my evals and clinical sites, I think this is going to be a huge step just because we're football. And I just think when you're with football, it's just more of ask is from you, more is asked from you, just because it's your last year and you kind of have to, I feel like, not prove ourselves to our preceptors, but kind of to ourselves to kind of say like, hey, you're ready for like what's about to come, like with the BOC and then like applying for jobs. So I think that one thing, a couple things I could do was just like becoming even more not just involved, but care more about like athletes and injuries and how that's going to help me. Because sometimes you get an athlete and you're like, oh, here we go, like I have to do something like for them, you know, like you're busy doing other things and you have to do that. But I think like sitting like time with the athlete and really think about not just your evaluating skills, but the injury overall, and like think about the whole process, like rehab, like what you're gonna like treatment wise. I think all of that, like that's all gonna tie into, especially for like review for the BOC, a lot of that. So I think by spending more time doing that and just paying more attention to like different preceptors, like how they do it in like high school. So like Austin, what he does is different from here on campus. I think will definitely be really helpful to continue on that goal for next year. And for the third goal, to set time aside for homework next year. My schedule's kind of crazy already next year, so I think this is going to be more difficult. But I think that since I saw how much of a difference it made this year, like the improvement like on my grades and everything, so I think like that will definitely give me enough motivation to kind of want to continue that. And I think I just really need to think about like the BOC is a huge thing, and that's not something I don't want to pass the first time. So I think that that's going to be enough motivation by itself to kind of keep me going to want to study and, you know, spend time for those things. So I think that's some of the specific actions I could do to continue these goals next year, and also just kind of set a few more goals, because this was definitely really helpful. So I think continuing on these goals, but also making new ones for next year will make my life hopefully a lot easier, and hopefully just kind of help out everything, you know, thinking about what we need to do to finish well in the school year and finish well with the BOC and graduation and applying to other places. And I think these goals will really help us get to where we want to go. in our future.